Facing two ways. Are you double-minded? Jesus says that a double-minded man or woman is unstable in all his or her ways, and that such a person need expect nothing from the great law. If any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God, that giveth to all people liberally, and upbraideth not, and it shall be given. But let him ask in faith, nothing wavering. For he that wavers is like a wave of the sea, driven with the wind and tossed. For let not that person think that he or she shall receive anything of the Lord.
Now, let me do the Lamsa
And
translation.
that is from James chapter 1, verses 5 through 7.
So the Lamsa translation is very similar. If any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives to all men liberally and with grace, and it will be given him. But let him ask in faith, not doubting. For he who doubts is like the waves of the sea, driven by the wind and tossed. Thus let not that man suppose that he will receive anything of the Lord. Go ahead.
This is very obvious common sense. If you affirm one thing now and the opposite in half an hour, if you meditate helpfully and then go downstairs to talk trouble, it is entirely natural that you should fail to influence people with the peace that comes with prayer. If you stepped into a taxi at Grand Central and told the driver to take you to Central Park, and then after a block told him to drive you to the Battery, and then after a couple of blocks asked him to go to Central Park again, you could hardly expect the driver to land at any destination. And yet this is what a good many of us do in practice. We affirm both harmony and disharmony until the subconscious mind is completely muddled, and of course our lives are in confusion. Where our words and deeds reinforce one another, the effect is powerful and the result certain. Where they are not in accord, they cancel out, leaving us where we started, or more likely worse off.
Thank you. The title today is God in Slow Time, and it came from an article I came across. The title was, Carlos Whitaker spent 7 weeks screen-free. Here's how his idea of God changed. And the story is that Whitaker is a former evangelical pastor and touring evangelical performer who one day some program on his cell phone told him how much time he'd spent looking at his cell phone the past week. And it averaged to 7 hours and 23 minutes per day. And as he recounts it, he did some quick math, and that worked out to nearly 100 full days a year. That led to him questioning, how was this affecting his thinking? How was this affecting him? And he talked with a psychiatrist, and what he asked was, what would he need to do, or how long would he need to get himself away from digital devices to affect change in his brain away from what we'll call digital dependence. Let's see, what was the answer? 2 months was the answer. So what he did, he went and spent 2 weeks in a monastery with Benedictine monks where you could only talk for, I think it was half an hour a day. And then he spent 2 weeks working on an Amish farm, and then 3 more weeks with his family, first at home and then on a trip to Yellowstone, but with no connectivity. And he published a book called Reconnected, How 7 Screen-Free Weeks with Monks and Amish Farmers Helped Me Recover the Lost Art of Being Human, which shows you where it's going. He recounted how difficult it was. Basically, it sounded like going cold turkey from an addiction. But what his experience was during the first time with the Benedictines, he found his whole sense of faith, his connection with God, disturbed. And he realized that he had been using his screen time to process religious information, listening to preachers on YouTube, reading this, that, and something else, as he called it, filling his mind with content. And then when all that went away in the Benedictine monastery, he found that his sense of God got really tangled up. It was like, he said, deconstruction and then reconstruction over that first 7 days. He went from just consuming ideas to realizing that that was building a box around God. And in fact, I'd considered, when I was thinking of a title, God in a Box. But what he recounts is, as he was able to, shall we say, go inside, he says, God got way bigger than I ever pictured he was going to get. And what it showed him was the value of slow time, not just in terms of interacting with the divine, but also in things like savoring life. He recounts how he never thought of savoring life as something that was spiritual, but he realized that in his addiction, I'm going to use it, he didn't use this word, but in his addiction to screen time, he'd lost the ability to slow down and savor the life that we live, the pieces of how we live. He says multitasking is the worst thing that ever happened to us as humans. Now, instead of stopping at a Starbucks and getting coffee to go, he sits down someplace with an actual ceramic mug and takes 5 or 10 minutes to savor it, to enjoy it. He says, taking the time, the coffee just tasted better. And he likens that to moving with God at God's speed, which is slower. And so he went from, at first, panic attacks when he didn't have the screen to keep him occupied and feed more information, to just being able to walk slowly. And in so doing, it was a new connection with the divine. He says, the divine didn't create us to cram our brains to overflowing with pieces of data. When we do that, we lose the sense of wonder, we lose the sense of mystery, which is a part of our human nature, part of what we've been created for. And he says Google has that similar effect. You have a question now, immediately you go to Google or any other search engine, and you get an answer, as opposed to just wondering about it. And the wondering gives us a broader way of experiencing the divine, a broader way of joying in this environment, this universe that we currently inhabit. So he says, when we give up the need to instantly know, we'll find that our questions often will lead to more questions. And the more questions we have, the broader our sense of existence, and the more we can access our own creativity. So he suggests moving from attempts at certainty to trust, to giving up what he calls the false sense of control that we cling on to by getting instant information. And those of you who've been around a while, you know I often talk about the amorphicity of God, that anytime we try to define the divine, we're actually limiting the divine. And that's what he's essentially talking about too. The more we try to live with knowledge as the be-all and end-all, that to be worshipped, and these are my words, not his, the less we have available to experience this wondrous divine, in as much as we're capable of experiencing it. So he says he doesn't even use a mapping program or a GPS anymore when he's driving. He sits down, he writes out directions, and if he gets lost, he has a new experience. He has a new adventure. And I suggest that applies to us with God as well. Allow yourselves to be open to new adventures. But that also means allow yourself to be less certain about what God is, how God is in us, around us, how the divine works, how we fit in this universe. And as Emmett Fox says, we come into this universe, but we also exit this universe. We're still the same spirit. So we can afford to let this play out. Emmett Fox himself says in another reading someplace that we have to understand that our relationship with God, our understanding of the divine, is always unfolding. If we allow it, there is no stasis. Yes, there are lots of folks who want assuredness. You'll find them in the conservative religions, whether conservative Christianity, conservative Muslim. I happened to hear an interview with a man who was converted to one of the most fundamentalist forms, the type of Islam, the type the Taliban has. And he is so joyous because he knows exactly who he is and what he has to do, and God loves him, and he has to just follow the rules. And he was almost literally, it was a radio interview, but he was almost literally pounding the table. He was so happy to have this certitude. And I'm here to tell you, and Fox is here to tell you, that certitude is a limit. It keeps you from experiencing all that the divine has to offer you. So he talks again, going back about God time and savoring. He says he's fallen in love with having long conversations, to having 90-minute meals. He mentions parenthetically something that I had not been aware of, that 100 years ago, the average meal, family around the table, lasted 90 minutes. The average, he says, according to the studies, the average meal now lasts 12 minutes. And I confess I'm guilty of that. I need to change that. So he suggests, don't go for 90, but try going for 30. If necessary, set a timer, put it out in the kitchen so you can't keep track, and have your time with those around you. And similarly, I will say to you, have your time with the divine around you. Allow yourselves to savor that moment, whether it's walking through a forest, sitting outside petting a cat, sitting in a sanctuary. Phyllis and I visited a now defunct church that's being turned into a community center, a 150-year-old church. And when I walked into the sanctuary, the stillness, the peace emanating from that was so strong. And the woman who's purchased the building to turn it into a community center says she hopes she can leave that sanctuary untouched so that anyone wanting some time with the divine can feel welcomed in there. Now, you can do the same in your own dwelling. To have a spot, perhaps we could call it an altar, perhaps a special chair, where you make a practice of sitting and not looking at cell phones, at not thinking hard or pushing. And that's a flaw we can all fall into. In my own lift practice, I have people who are trying so hard to find their purpose in life, and they're so frustrated. And I have to say from my own experience, I had no way in hell to know where I was going. Thank goodness I knew I wanted to do something worthwhile, but I wasn't beating myself up, because the way I got to where I am now, if I'd been pushing it, I never would have got here. And each of us, in our own way, can walk slowly in God time and allow the divine to guide us, sometimes with happenstance, sometimes with a nudge, sometimes with an idea. But what we don't need to do is fill our minds with every sort of concept or thought or prayer. We can just be in God. And as panentheists, and I suspect whether you know the term or not, we all are. God in us, God is us, God is around us. We are every bit of the universe. When we allow ourselves to relax, we're better able to meld into this wonderful universe, which is God. And he says, and I chuckled at it, the longer you eat together, the better your relationships become. So, worth thinking about. So, the expansion, the longer we eat together, the better our relationships. The more relaxed and longer we allow our connections with the divine, rather than trying to shove it or define it, the closer, the more connected we are with all the divine wonders and with divine love. And as I was reading this, an old hymn came to me. I'm not going to try to sing it. You can be very glad of that. But it leads off, take time to be holy. Speak oft with thy Lord. Abide in him always. So, to me, I suggest that's a wonderful motto, shall we say, for your spiritual walk. Take time, speak and listen oft with the divine in all the different ways the divine communicates with us. If you're hurrying, you can't hear it. Be aware that you are in and of him at all times, or her, or whatever definition. It, how about it? And that led me to remembering Albert Einstein. It was sort of a subject of fascination for his colleagues. They'd be working on a problem and be absolutely stuck, and had been stuck for some time. And Einstein would say, I think I need to go have a little think. And he'd go outside and walk out, just take a walk for an hour or some lengthy period of time. And when he came back, he inevitably had the solution to the stoppage. We don't have to push ourselves to be wise. By relaxing, by allowing the divine within us, that allows us to absorb wisdom, divine love. Then I've looked at Richard Rohr. Father Richard Rohr, for those of you who aren't familiar, is a Franciscan mystic. Um, Phyllis, in fact, spent much of her early teenage life living in the community with him, so we have a sense of a personal contact. And what he writes is, what is being asked of us is patient attention, a willingness to slow down, listen, and look, a willingness to let go of our expectations, to accept the possibility that our efforts may not bear any fruit, or at least not in the way we had been hoping they will. And then he quotes the mystic Simone Weil. We do not obtain the most precious gifts by going in search of them, but by waiting for them. And then he writes, I smile to think of my own impatience, my relative incapacity to wait for much of anything. Why do I put so much stock in my ability to seek and find what I'm looking for? Why is it so difficult for me to wait for things to unfold, to reveal themselves? And I think that's what I want to leave us with. Take time to be holy. Allow yourself to wait for things to unfold, to reveal themselves. And don't try to define how that information will come. If you're not familiar with the ways of the shaman, let me know. We'll have a conversation about that, because that certainly is a good way of throwing out all of your preconceived ideas about how this world works and how our spirituality works. And that's what I have to say for myself, aside from a sneeze. So, anyone with a contribution? Yes, Lori Kay. And then I think Ellie was next.
I love that talk. That was just what the doctor ordered. I have to say that I don't have a specific feel of a connection with the divine right now. I am trying to let everything unfold, but everything has fallen apart. So there's no job, there's no money coming in, there's no sense of real direction, because I realized recently I was pushing too hard. And so today I was finally able to just not do, like do nothing, like not do, and allow myself to do things as they arose in my being, to say, I might like to do that, or I'll do a little bit of that, and then I'll do a little bit of this. Because I don't understand rest. I know that in my being, I just don't understand it. Especially since 10 years ago, when my life fell apart in a real way. Like I didn't know if I'd come out of it. And so I had to push. And so that button, that on button, like go, 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 find the job, find the this, find the that, ask for help, keep doing. It's not only something we're taught, but it's also situationally induced. So a situation that'll bring up fear or anxiety, or I better start doing something. So I appreciate so much hearing your talk, because it's saying you don't have to know how, but you have to invite yourself. And I do keep inviting myself. And I consider myself a kind of a first grader at it.
Thank you. Okay, Ellie, and then Leah has a hand up. There you go.
I enjoyed your talk, because I mean, to me it just reinforces, what scripture says, and maybe my knowledge in the Jewish aspect, the Jewish experience, enhances that too. But as you know, Brian, in Christianity or in most religions, spirituality walks, there's one day set aside for rest. So I've always done that. Even when I was little, I remember my Ema doing that. It was one day. And, to recharge, to do nothing, to read, then we didn't have computers and screen time either, but we had the library and microfiche and card catalogs. So it was that mind thing of allowing and searching and wondering, because it wasn't instant. I mean, card catalogs or what's the other one? Encyclopedia Britannica. That wasn't instant. Anyway, I'm reading a book, and what you were saying is in a book too. It's called Hearthcraft. As a topic in the book, and it says, Hearthcraft recognizes your home is your sacred place, a place that has the power to refresh, relax, and rejuvenate. And then it says, but how precisely can you intentionally tap into this? This chapter explores methods you can use to locate, bless, and work with your spiritual hearth in your home and in yourself. Spiritual hearth revolves around the energy and atmosphere of the home, both of which can be cultivated by behavior, attitude, and positive outlook. So it's all along the lines of what you were saying. And I think it's funny, ironic that whoever is speaking, whatever I'm reading, aligns with that, whether it's the Bible or whether it's a book or whether it's what someone has said, something that I need to re-know or relearn or confirm even. And it's just, the universe's way of saying, okay, you're on the right path. Even though you may question, you may second guess yourself, you're on the right path. So, thank you for that confirmation today.
Give thanks up there. I just do whatever the divine tells me to say.
Right?
Thank you. Okay, Leah.
And then Lori
And,
Roberts.
and then Lori R. Okay.
I like what you had to say towards the beginning when you said take your time, slow down. And that's been a hard one for me, even though certain things will happen and I can hear it saying, what's the rush? But again, because of the situation, earlier this year, I still cannot rush even if I wanted to. But at the same time, it is still a little frustrating because I at least like to be able to do a little bit more than I can, even though it's not rushing, but I want to still go. Like if I want to go to the grocery store, can I do that today? Well, I'm tired. Well, this or that, so it's kind of like I have to evaluate. And I'm doing little things to help me still keep my energy going, but I'm not feeling very energized at times. And I'm still like being told inside of me, what's the rush? Take it easy. Yeah, but I've been out of the hospital for 6 months or so now. I should be able to do something. And it's not going fast. So there are certain things, yeah, I am appreciating taking my time with on some things, and some things is like I wish I could do just a little bit more. I got plans, and nothing's worked out for this whole year of plans. Nothing. But again, listening, you say, just enjoy the coffee, whatever. So even though I'm going slow, I'm not always enjoying the slow. I don't like coffee, but still use that example. But I'm not really sitting there and enjoying the coffee while I have time. because I'm still sitting there thinking, oh, I wish I could get over to where the creamer is. Why do I have to be stuck here at the table with the coffee? I wish I could, and I might be able to sneak into the creamer, but I'm not enjoying the process all the time. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's see. Lori R. is next.
Thank you very much for your talk. I agree with Ellie. It seems like every week it goes along with where I've been, what I've been studying, what's happening in life. And I find that wonderful that it all goes so hand in hand together. And I love what Phyllis was talking about at the beginning. And you made the comment, we affirm both harmony and disharmony, which can cancel each other out. And I've been having some aha moments this week. In our conscious, we can be on one level thinking about praise and gratitude and believing, but our subconscious can get us stuck in fear or doubt or disbelief. And in actuality, those two cancel each other out. And we wonder why we can't raise our vibration. And I just sort of had that aha moment, which goes along with what you talked about tonight, that we need to get our consciousness and our subconsciousness on board on the same level. So thank you.
Anybody else? Yes, Bob Vogus.
Yes, we're totally in sensory overload most of the time because there's so much things going on. And one thing that hasn't been brought up yet is meditation. And that is kind of a force you to take a deep breath and introspect, do some introspecting and allowing to release some of our negative energies. And there are many of us of a certain age that remember transcendental meditation. That was very, very popular decades ago. And there's so many books and teachers and out there. Just avail yourself of doing that, going that path, and just spending a little time a day, even if it's 5 minutes. Just take that time and do it.
Thank you. Yes, Maddie.
Yeah, this is definitely very timely. I've been kind of thinking about taking the social media break again, because a lot of times I get trapped in the scroll of social media because I grew up with it at a younger age. So it's more prevalent in my age group. But I've noticed that when I am on social media a lot more, my anxiety gets a lot more heightened because I'm hearing a lot of opinions, a lot of people saying you should do this, you should do that. This is how your life should look. Or look at how my life looks. You have to emulate it. And so a lot of the times I'll get caught up in things that I do on a daily basis that aren't adding up to that perfect picture. And so I have taken social media breaks in the past, and I always end up being more at peace and more able to hear my own thoughts again, versus other people's opinions. So this was very timely for that. Definitely just reminding me that it's okay to take those breaks. It's not societally a bad thing to, not engage with social media. So
I think it's especially important with it being an election year and having such high emotions around the country and around the world, really, to not buy into it and not be adding to it. And I think that really goes back to, I think the first thing you kind of talked about is not doubting when we ask for something, and trusting that the people who feel the same way we do are going to take as much action as needed. And I don't need to sit and fester about the fact that I could be doing something when the best thing I could do for myself is maybe not do something. Or we've been talking about it more too, is maybe going out and doing something is the thing that I get more connection with. And sometimes maybe I'm sitting down too much by myself. And there are actions that God is pointing out for me to take. And sometimes you do need to take steps to stay along the path and not try to reroute.
Which reminds me, I don't know if I've put it into a talk yet, but I was thinking of the experiment that the Maharishi Mahesh Yoga University did, where they sent a bunch of meditators into a very troubled town and then kept track of the difference in crime before they showed up and what the crime rate was after a year of just meditating. Whew. So sometimes doing nothing is the best thing you can do to do something.
Yeah, because sometimes you're pushing against the direction you're really supposed to be going, and it's kind of just fighting the inevitable. And I think, I mean, we'll definitely experience it more as we experience more life, but the amount of events that are going to show up that we think are just terrible things or like the end of everything, but like how we both first met, we thought it was like the worst thing that ever happened to us we had gone through. But if we didn't go through that, we would have never met each other, even though we lived down the street from each other. So there's those weird little coincidences in there.
Yeah, the divine work, well, the statement, the divine works in wondrous ways. But if we are so rigid as to reject something that is coming from an unexpected place, we can miss a lot. Okay, I think it's, oh, Ellie, yes.
Another couple things that, I've found that works for me, and most of you will know the first one, root work. When we sit down with ourselves and we do the inward introspection or root work, that doesn't necessarily help with screen time. Because once you use screen time with that, you kind of defeat the purpose of that particular practice. But another thing that I found that works for me, kind of along the line of meditative, I guess, is Lori R knows this already, but I do my own tea blends and seasoning blends. And so when someone comes to me or when I'm feeling off, my first thought is, there's a tea for that. Which herb, which spice, and a lot of people are like, well, what do you mean? And it's like, well, if you think about it, all the pharmaceuticals stemmed from that first, Native American, even in scripture, the priests, the midwives, they all had that knowledge base. And part of that is going out and wildcrafting or foraging these things on your own. When we moved, I don't know, the 15 miles from where we were to where we are now, I started looking around and going, okay, what are the local resources, i.e. the herbs that are around me that I can find myself instead of going to the store and getting them? Because going to the store takes 30 to 45 minutes on average to get there. And a walk to the park or the hills takes maybe 15 or 20. So, I found that being out in nature, finding those things, finding if I wasn't familiar with something, oh, Mullen does that. Oh, it helps me to breathe. So when it was smoky around here with all the fires and the burning fields for agricultural, that's the first thing I did. It's like, okay, so I know Mullen works. I know stinging nettle works for allergies. Okay, so both of those can help me breathe through this. I had so many friends around this little area that were on that they said their allergy medicine didn't work. The doctor couldn't prescribe anything, and I said, well, have you tried this and this? Well, no, what is that? Do you order it online? Well, you can, but this is where I found it. Would you like some? Well, sure, whatever. So I made them, some tea up. I gave it to them. They called me back or text me and they go, what is this? It works. And to me, it's, not my knowledge, because it's not my knowledge. It's the divine's knowledge that I've been given for that. Because even he says that he's given the trees of the fields and the herbs to be our food. we're a long way from that in today's society. You know, we go and we get food from the store. Okay, fine. But what did they do before? They didn't have a store. They didn't have the chemicals. They didn't have all that. And I would almost guarantee that their health was a lot better then than it is today. So, those things are just a couple things that I found that helps me reconnect or reconstruct to myself, is the resting, the meditation, the root work, finding the natural things and being connected to the earth where we came from.
Cool. Thank you. Let us come to close. Dear God, we thank you for having brought us together again, for having given us opportunities to grow together, to share together, to love together, to pray together. We thank you for guiding us from here to wherever we're supposed to be this week. We thank you for guiding us to whatever service we're supposed to do for you this week, to receive whatever it is you have to give us this week. Help us to create more silence and to go more slowly this week, and to learn to joy in the slowness. We give you full gratitude for the good in our lives, for the love in our lives, dear God. We say thank you, thank you, thank you, and amen.
Amen.